Tales from afar, stories to burn, dodgy old geezers and lessons to learn. From Alfred to Jerry, the scamps and the graft, they're spilling the beans and having a laugh. Mark, Annie and Pete, they're talking matter for you. Old school charm and a pint or two. So press play now, don't miss a treat. You'll love the stories, put it on the slate. Tales galore and so much more. So listen now with her indoors.
Hello there, I'm Pete.
I'm Andy,
And I'm Mark.
and you're listening to Minder on the Slate. Hello, and welcome back to Minder on the Slate, our podcast dedicated to all things Minder. We've gone back to the days of the 3-day week, to unions and strikes, and when getting your chopper out meant something completely different. Each week on this podcast, we watch, review, and rate a classic episode of Minder. And sometimes, if they're lucky, we welcome actors into our Minder Special Guest Hall of Fame. So for us Minder aficionados, every episode is exciting. For this week's episode, The Bounty Hunter is especially so. Tell us why, Pete.
Before we get to that, Andy, I feel like you omitted something very crucial in your opening statement there about the 3-day week unions and strikes and choppers. You omitted to mention white dog poo. Just for the record. Okay, well, Andy, despite this being episode 5 of series 1, this was actually the very first episode to be filmed.
Filmed between Monday the 23rd of April and Friday the 4th of May 1979. It's the first time that Dennis Waterman and George Cole played their career-defining roles.
Joining Dennis and George for The Bounty Hunter, we have an all-star cast. George Layton as Des, Christopher Biggins as Harold, and the future Sir Derek Jacobi as Freddie Fenton, along with lots of other recognisable faces that I think we'll get to.
Hope so.
Yeah, Bounty Hunter was written by Bernie Cooper and directed by Peter Sadsby. It originally aired on the 26th of November 1979, which, as an aside, would have been my mum's 36th birthday. So in all probability, I would have been in a Bernie Inn in Kingston upon Thames, having a prawn cocktail, steak, and a bit of apple pie. And I would have been 7 years old. So I think steak is good when you're
Have
7.
Bernie Inn's been cancelled yet?
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, you struggle to find
Have
one.
they rebranded or anything? Is it always
No, I think they went out of business some time ago, didn't they?
Harvester's the closest
Sorry,
you'll get.
goodness.
But everything else caught up. Whereas at the time, the Bernie Inn was the once a year, or maybe twice a year for your dad's birthday as well. It was a twice a year treat.
Where did you go on your birthday?
me?
Oh, I didn't really like
No,
McDonald's, so I think we went to McDonald's once. You'd have been there, Ad.
Yeah, I would have been. Anyway, we lost track already when we got past the introduction. Right, back to the script. Now,
Script?
this is the very first. Yeah, there is. Now, as this is the very first episode to be filmed, do you think it shows, Pete? Tell me.
Yes, I'll be honest. I was watching it thinking, yeah, this feels like it must have been an early episode, just in terms of dynamics, accents, and little stuff like that that we have discussed previously. I wasn't aware it was the first until we've planned for tonight. So I think it does show, but I don't think it's as obvious as I think it's some of the other episodes in this series, which feel possibly a little bit more jarring than this one. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I like the way the episode flows. There are quite a few plot holes if you want to dig deeply.
Oh, we're going to dig.
There's not as much humour in this one, I don't think. There are some great moments and there's a couple of absolute belting lines. But generally, I don't think that much happens and there's not that many laughs. But I really find it an easy watch. I find it quite enjoyable. I think it flows quite well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It is enjoyable. I think we discussed this when we went out for a drink that time, and I think it probably started this whole thing going off. We talked about this. I think at the time, I don't think I noticed it was the first episode. I don't know whether you did, but now when you know, it's kind of quite obvious. But there's little bits that give it away. I don't know, but we'll get into it, shall we?
So before we get into it, just very quickly, what are the telltales that this is very early, in fact, the earliest Minder moments?
Oh, I go posh accents, They're a
Yeah,
little bit
definitely.
posher than normal, or as
Yes.
we grew to love them.
There's something that happens fairly early. Well, I don't want to mention it yet. I think we'll mention it at the time because it will come up, and I
Okay.
think there's something that I've got a little theory about. So I don't want to.
Oh,
I'm going to keep my powder dry. But
There's a lack of the regular, or well, you'd say there's none of the policemen in it. There's no Chisholm or Rycart. There's no Dave. So there
yeah,
are a few gaps there from what you'd maybe expect from a more traditional Minder episode.
yeah,
I'll tell you what, I won't go there because it might be Andy's theory. When you should be on GB News or something, Andy, with all your
yeah.
theories.
I think my theory today is going to be the most unpopular yet. So
Okay, well,
we'll get there. And I don't
we'll
want.
crack
Yeah,
on.
We get
yeah.
Matt
So we'll crack
Letitia
on.
on next week as a special guest.
Yeah.
What about that fella from Scotland with the long hair? Anyway, no, we're going off topic again. Stay focused. Must stay focused. Right. So where should we start?
I think we should probably start with mentioning some of the cast because we've obviously got Des. First time we see George Layton as Des. We got
Hurrah! Friend of the podcast.
yes, yeah, and it probably is part of the reason why we're doing this, isn't it? Well, I think we met George the same day we met you, so we're not going to be too harsh on George Layton, are we? Because we all love him, we've all met him, and we all really like him. So I think he's going to get easy ride on this.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that because you've got him and you've got Derek Jacobi, whose birthday it is today, the day we're recording this.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually that our guest stars are still alive
Mm.
when we're filming this today. If you're watching in the future, rest in peace and all that. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's unusual, that, isn't it? Most every episode you tend to watch, the early ones, unfortunately, a lot of the people are no longer with us. But Biggins is still with us.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, do you think they deliberately went for, because this George Layton is obviously already a star at this stage. He's done The Doctors, he's done his films, so he's quite a big, well-known name. Derek Jacobi's done I, Claudius. He's a big name. Do you think they deliberately went for bigger names, or do you think that it's just an accident? But it's a very good cast.
I think if you'd deliberately done it, you would have put it out earlier. If you filmed it first and you've gone, right, we're going big, we're going Jacobi. Obviously, Layton, not quite as big a name, but it's still like a star of the 70s.
Yeah,
so I think you'd probably put it out maybe earlier, like as the first one.
Yeah, so do you just think that it was just luck? They both accepted the role, and because they were both, like, George Layton he'd been in lots of things, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Not like he'd done. Go on.
I'm not so sure. I think your point that, first episode, let's go for it. I think in those days, it wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, obviously, there were some actors who just did everything that was offered to them. And,
Biggins.
fair play to them for that. But I think I think that it was a time when some actors were quite selective and wouldn't have just done every single. So, like you say, Jacobi had done, was it Jacobi? Or was that Twin Peaks? Yeah. So I think they probably have gone for big names. And I think George Layton, definitely was, a big name and is. I wonder if they've, I'm assuming the writer never did another Minder, and which we'll get to. And I'm wondering if they realised it wasn't the strongest episode that they had up the sleeve after they'd filmed.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
the director, he directed OK Laundrette as well. So he directed the one that was the very first one, and he did Bengal Tiger as well. So we ended up doing 3. Bengal Tiger might be next week, actually, might it? But I think it might be the next couple of weeks. Yeah, Aces High is next week. Yeah, so Bengal Tiger maybe the week after that. So he had 3 in the first series. Yeah, I think when we talked about the first one, it's like it's the biggest budget. So they clearly knew that was going to be the first one. But there's not the star names in that one that you've got.
No, that's the weird thing, isn't it? And some of the acting, I think we mentioned it in the first episode, some of the acting is a bit ropey, isn't it? From some of the supporting cast. George Cole is a lot better in Laundrette than he is in this one. I think Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think maybe they did go big because they wanted it to be. It possibly could have been the first one if the other one didn't work out. Maybe
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know, but you were always going to get the first one's always going to be a Leon Griffiths script, isn't it? You would have thought.
Good point.
So he's not going to give the first one away to someone. So don't know. It could just be luck. It could just be that they offered it to Jacoby and he said yes. You know, he's the first choice, maybe, and
And I didn't recognise him when I first watched it. I had no idea it was Jacoby.
there you go.
You see the name at the start. All right, Freddie Fenton, Derek Jacobi, and then you forget which character they're playing. So Derek Jacobi's in it, and then you get to about 10 minutes before the end. The thing is, where's Derek Jacobi?
How
Well,
did
that's
you not-
that,
I did not twig it at all. Did not twig it at all.
well, I mean,
I'm a bit
you're an
simple.
idiot, but fair
Yeah.
enough.
It's, so I recognise George Layton
There you go.
and
Yeah.
Biggins. You know, first scene, Biggins is there. You know, we all love Biggins in many of my favourite sitcoms, whether it's Porridge or The Likely Lads. He always turns up, and there he
Yeah.
is. There he is. First filmed episode of Minder.
Yes, right. So we start with Des banging on Terry's flat, banging on the door. Not the normal flat he lives in. It's a different one, isn't it? I think they only used this one once, but he's banging on his door and he wants him to go and help him pick a car up, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yes.
A red Jaguar XJS.
Yes, very nice car.
He's very smart.
What is it Terry says? I told you should always buy British. I'm
Yeah.
assuming was a slogan at the time.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so they go off, don't they? And it's there's this great van he's got, isn't it, with the doors that stay open while you're driving.
Yep.
It wouldn't happen these days. Health and safety, but yeah. So
That van must have been recycled from other Euston TV productions like The Sweeney and stuff like that. Must have been.
Yeah, there'll be
camper
something
van-
online.
yeah, the orange camper van's in the background as well.
Oh,
And so so they go off and do that. Then we meet Arthur at the tailor's with Biggins, don't we?
Not quite as camp as normal Biggins as well. He's playing. I mean, he's obviously camp, but he's not quite at the far camp end of his repertoire.
Well, I think the thing with Biggins is he's become a caricature, isn't he? Of he's just that he's playing a character now, but he was actually quite a good actor, wasn't he? And he
he
was
was an
good
eye
at
Claudius,
things.
wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
Maybe he had a word with Derek Jacobi. I said, I've just been offered this part. Do you
yeah,
couple of days filming?
yeah.
£500 in a brown envelope, no questions asked.
And it's quite a weird one, isn't it? With Arthur doesn't really get a word in edgeways with him, does he? And Biggins very much wears the trousers in their relationship, doesn't he?
So here's the thing, and apologies, I am going to be a little bit premature, no jokes please, in terms of the plot. But basically, the overall plot is Arthur is contacted by the widow of an old friend who has been conned out of money on some kind of bogus property deal. And the golden thread throughout the show is, plot-wise, is basically Terry's put on the case to investigate. So there's a few, leads he follows up and dead ends. But then alongside that, you've got Des utilising Terry to help him retrieve cars. It transpires they're actually stolen. And then we've also got this subplot of Arthur schmoozing with Biggins slightly, and that we see that a few times. But in both instances, the latent subplot or the Des subplot is just so that we can, right at the very end, we need Des to steal a car. So we've got this entire subplot to establish that. And then quite near the end, we need Arthur to spot the Derek Jacobi character at a posh club. So that's why we've had the whole Biggins subplot. It's all a bit laboured. Do you know what I mean? Like, is it me?
But I think the Des subplot works quite well because when you're introducing Des, who's a recurring character,
Yeah.
you're introducing the fact that he's a little bit shady and Terry's trying to go straight. So he's sort of pulling him along that way, and he has to do it, undercover because Terry won't agree to steal vans or cars. So I think there is an element of character development in that subplot. They've used that
Okay.
to come along. Yeah, the Biggins one is completely, there's no real reason for it.
The weird thing about the Biggins one
I said they want to go to they go to the Montclair Club, don't they? So now the whole thing is Arthur wants to become a member of the Montclair Club. Higgins is a member, and he's introducing him for a night, which doesn't look like much of a club. I mean, it's one room with appears to be a roulette table and maybe a blackjack table, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's not right. Yeah. And the weird thing about the Biggins bit is that Arthur doesn't get any lines, does he? So he's kind of marginalized, and he is through a lot of the episode, isn't he? And Biggins gets the better lines. Des gets a lot of good lines, and there's like a chemistry between Des and Terry, isn't there? Which is more Terry and Arthur later on, isn't it? It's more, and it's like, would I lie to you kind of thing, and would I do anything dodgy? They got a very, I thought, I don't know if it's just me, I thought they've got a very Dale and Rodney thing going on.
Yeah,
Terry
it's
and
a good.
Des.
There's a good vibe between them there. There's
Yeah,
a bit of back
it's
and
a
forth.
very. I wonder if John Sullivan was sitting there writing, because they got that, especially the early Fools and Horses. They were very much like Del pulling the wool over Rodney's eyes, weren't they? That he was doing something dodgy, and there was a real element of that. And I think if this had been the first episode, you probably would have been disappointed that Des didn't come back in episode 2, because there's a really good camaraderie between them, isn't there? It's very entertaining. And I know you what you say. He's only there because we need him to nick the car at the end.
It does.
It's a fun way to get there.
It sort of serves more of a purpose, I suppose, with the Biggins stuff. Really, yeah, it does have that plot sort of requirement that it needs to satisfy. I suppose we also see a little bit about Arthur with his aspirations to be, one of the upper crust, but then he speaks with a little bit of a posh accent in any case. It doesn't quite work. It does, however, enable some moments of, how can I put this, mild homophobia with a few slightly alarmed looks from George Cole as Biggins, like, doesn't do anything particularly bad, but just like touches him and stuff like that. And you can see George Cole sort of like nervously sort of hesitating slightly.
Yeah.
But I mean, and obviously that's totally unacceptable. But other than that, yeah, it doesn't do a lot. And I wonder do you think Biggins was being groomed for a return, or?
It's possible, isn't it? I mean,
it's not the world they were. It's not the world of Minder, is it? Like that sort of posh friends thing.
Yeah, and how often is he really going to go to the tailors, realistically?
But the Montclair Club could have become more of a place for them to meet. But I think Arthur's it's slightly out of character in this episode, isn't he? He's a bit kinder and a little bit more honest in this episode. There's a few points where he's particularly kind or generous, which you don't necessarily associate with him later on in the more becomes more of a lovable rogue, where at this stage he's sort of just, I say, he's a little bit marginalized in this this episode.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, like, I was reading his biography and he says, it just jumped straight off the page and I knew straight away, and like you watch it and you think, nah, I don't think you did. I think you were scratching around for, I mean, he's by the following week it's so much better, which is strange, but he was much better in OK Laundrette, I think. Yeah.
Did you want to mention something about the Arthur and Joel thing, Andy?
Arthur and
Joe.
So yeah, so she's what is she to him? We never really.
It's friend. He was obviously a friend of hers and her late husband's.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. Well, not that close friend, because it didn't appear to know he died.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't recognise her straight away, but she's obviously made a beeline for him, hasn't she?
Yeah, and she's a taxi driver now, and she's down on her luck because Freddie Fenton's taken her
life insurance.
Yeah, life insurance and stuff. And so he then suggests Terry to find it for her. There's a bit in there, well, I think you said about the plot holes. There's one here with where did he get the 12.5% of the $5,000 from? That doesn't make.
Yeah.
I don't know where he got that from, because it's not mentioned. But then he tells Terry that they're going to get 12.5% or something. Is it 12.5%?
12.5%. Yeah, 12.5%
Yeah.
of $6,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, $6,000. Okay.
Yeah. 150
So-
quid. There you go. That's what up there.
So we, she's a, to use an old fashioned parlance, she's a handsome woman, and we do have that funny scene. It's an unusual scene where Arthur and Terry appear to be just having a nice meal together, and that is not Minder.
No.
I think that's one of the telltales of this being an early episode.
Yeah, that's very strange.
Yeah, and Terry's not up for the job, and then she turns up, and suddenly he's quite
Yeah.
keen.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is
He
quite good.
Yes.
perks up.
Yeah.
That's one word for it, yeah. She says something like, "I'll make it worth your while," or something like that, and he
Yeah.
smirks lavishly.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Yeah, and he does try it. He kind of tries it on later, doesn't he? Oh, I love Beethoven.
You never used that line. I have, but
Yeah. Never-
it's we get a sense here. One of you mentioned about that slightly sort of early Del and Rodney dynamic where they're both obviously interested in this
Yeah.
attractive older lady. Arthur keeps, basically saying, "On your way, Terry, I'll
Yeah.
take care of George," stuff like that. And that never really happens again throughout the entire time of the series, which is surprising, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the signs, isn't it, that it's an early one. But
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly,
Yeah.
obviously, series one, Arthur is a little bit more on the womanizing front than he is from series two onwards. They've given up on that idea, haven't they?
Yeah.
But it's series one. There's
Pretty
still a hint of it with occasional glances at bar staff and obviously the singer, which is an episode we'll come to, controversial
Yeah.
episode, which we'll come to.
So Terry goes off, doesn't he, and tries to track down her missing money, and he ends up visiting Mr. Booze.
He does. It's a great name
Which
for
is-
an off license.
Yeah, you Mr. Booze, and then he plays a little tape record, doesn't he? With what's the thing called, something Homes?
It is. Oh, I've written that down. It is Sunworthy.
Sunworthy
Homes in the
Homes.
Sun Incorporated.
Yeah. I think this is quite topical, isn't it? Because at this sort of time, so 1979, the whole timeshare thing. I remember we started going away as a family around this time, and like you always warned, "Oh, don't talk to him. He's selling timeshares." And
Yeah.
like they were like the middle class boogeyman, weren't they? The timeshare seller. So I think people watching it at the time would have been quite aware of this sort
Yes.
of thing happened quite a bit.
What
And there was,
do you know about Mr. Booze?
what do I know about Mr. Booze?
Recognised him, but
Yes,
I didn't investigate further.
Well, he's called Brian Godfrey, and I recognised him because he seems to have been a bit of a mainstay in stage farces throughout the maybe late 70s and 80s. A lot of the Get Your Beers Ready, a lot of the Asquith ones.
That's great.
Hey, that's great.
So yeah, he's in like, Run for Your Wife and Show a Doctor in the House and stuff like that. The stage plays. He's got a very recognisable face. So I clocked him in
Yeah.
this. I was like, yeah, I think that's that fella that I've seen on the various posters. So I think that's where, I mean, he's on IMDb and stuff like that. But I think that's where a lot of his time was spent. Certainly throughout through the 80s.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely recognised him. He's got a familiar face.
Yes.
I think I did look him up, and I think he was in the film version of Run for Your Wife as well. Like a lot of people who'd been in the stage
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, yeah.
Anyone who was alive who had been in it.
Yeah, was in
Was
it,
in the
wasn't it? And I
film.
think he was credited that he was in it. I've never seen it.
We'll get to that at one point. Maybe a special one-off.
Yeah.
Or maybe a crossover with the other podcast I've been involved in. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be
Um,
good. Yeah.
So Mr. Booze sends him on his way somewhere, doesn't he?
To the
Directs
Hearsts.
them to the Hearsts. Now, suddenly we see a lot of familiar faces appearing.
Yes.
But first of all, Terry turns up at the Hearsts at the allotment and asks if it's is it?
Oh, it's not George.
Read it down. Ralph. So he's looking for Ralph, isn't he? He's looking for
Yeah.
Ralph Hurst, but he gets his son, Graham, who is played by a certain James Aubrey. Now, Pete, he's in one of your favourite movies. Did you get?
He's in the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, isn't he?
He is. That's not what I'm thinking of.
He's definitely in that.
You wrote a song. You wrote a song. One of my favourite of the songs that you've written.
Was he in The Sex Thief?
He is in The Sex Thief.
My
He is the
goodness.
first reporter. So he's not a named character. So it's
Ah.
probably very easy for you not to have spotted him. But yeah,
Yes.
he's the first reporter in The Sex Thief. So that immediately made me chuckle because I thought, right, that's fantastic.
I know you have. You associate me with a sex thief, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate on a few levels.
Not familiar. That is a 1970s saucy British comedy.
I would fully
Or disturbing.
recommend.
Yeah, disturbing
Yeah,
British comedy.
and I would fully recommend that any listeners who haven't seen it proactively go out the way not to see it because it will not enhance their lives. He's also in that BBC play Infidelities again with Mr. Asquith.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, he plays a sort of a romantic opponent of Robbins in that film or in that TV
Okay.
film. So yes, that's an interesting scene on the allotment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And to be honest, I think he does some really bad acting in this. I've no idea, God rest his soul, because he has sadly has passed. But I think he overacts in this particular one quite badly. But it does result in a punch up,
Yeah.
which leads us to our new section,
Yes.
Terry's
Um,
fights, Terry's
Terry's
punch
fights.
ups, and
And we
It's
need
your
to
idea.
rate them.
Go on,
Well,
you explain it.
we need to rate them, and they're either going to be Caesar's Palace, i.e., it's a top world class punch up, albeit in the context of Minder, or Caesar salad, in that it's a wilting disappointment. So, I mean, I think I know both of your answers to this one, but which category would you put this particular punch up in?
well, I don't want
Salad.
to I don't want to prejudge because there is a second sort of a punch up in this
Yes.
episode. And of the two punch ups in this episode, I think this is the better one. But I'm still going with salad.
Yeah, I would agree with anchovies. I mean, it's and he gets the better of ex prize fighter Terry McCann, which I
Yeah.
find very unlikely, but he manages it somehow.
Until
Well, he
Terry
lands a
grabs
blow,
the
doesn't he?
package.
He does land a blow. Yeah, and then which I think comes back to the Peter Sadsdy as director, because we've seen a bag of washing powder used to break up to end a fight, and now we see a prize cabbage used
Yeah.
to break up a fight. So I don't know whether that's a theme through Sadsdy's directorial career. Yeah, I mean the cabbage is a good moment. It lends itself to salad, doesn't it, rather than
It does.
palace.
Yeah.
And I think, for many people, and I don't mean to patronise, but certainly gents and women of your generation who were there first time round, I think that I don't think you can underappreciate the significance of Terry's fights in Minder.
Yeah.
We enjoy them now in a slightly sort of post-ironic way or something like that. When you were young and you watched these, I mean, this was the business, so
Yeah.
I think it's right that we take pause and discuss the merits of these various altercations.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
you
yeah, definitely a
turned up
salad
for
as
the you turned up for the theme tune and the punch up and a few comedy lines in between. But that is
Yeah.
as a 7-year-old, that's what you turned up to
Terry
to
pulling a
watch.
few ladies as well, So, okay, so and then at this point we meet Ralph, don't we?
Yes. The great Tony Steadman or Steedman. What would you say, Andrew? Is it Steadman or Steedman?
So I would say you would pronounce it Stedman, but it could be Steedman. I don't know.
So what have we seen him in?
Everything. He had a funny old career, didn't he?
Yeah.
He
Certainly
was
did.
like stalwart of British TV, and then he went to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, he'll always be Wolfie Smith's sort of girlfriend's dad in Citizen Smith, series 2 onwards, replacing Peter Vaughan.
Yeah.
But that's what I associate with him. When I first saw it, I think
Yeah.
Citizen.
So
I
are
remember.
you?
Go on.
Go on, mate.
I was going to say, I remember, like, I don't know how old I was. I was watching an episode of Doogie Howser. Remember Doogie Howser, MD?
Yeah.
And, I was watching it. It's like, that vicar or priest or whatever it is, that's the bloke from Citizen Smith. And he did loads of American sitcoms. He was in The Golden Girls. He was in The A-Team. He was in The Fall Guy. He was in all those kind of things, which is bizarre. But then he was in Citizen Smith and all those kind of things. And then he ended up in Bill and Ted as well, big part as well. No,
Did he play Socrates?
he did.
What, a Brazilian footballer?
He's very good at it.
Yeah, and he had the big bit at the end, didn't he? And then he has the speech at the end about the days of your lives, doesn't he?
Yes.
And then he ends up in the soap opera Days of Your Lives, probably because of it. Yeah. So
Didn't
he was
realise he
quite...
ended up in that.
Yeah, he did.
Great
Just
career.
back to-
Yeah.
Just back to Citizen Smith. Sorry to interrupt. Obviously, it was Peter Vaughan and then this chap, but there was actually a third father.
Was there?
There's,
Is it a pilot episode or something?
It's either a pilot or what did they used to call them, sort of comedy playhouse type things. It's something like that, and he's very well. He's like a Welsh Jimmy Edwards, the guy. That's what he looks like. But he was great as her dad actually, and I love Peter Vaughan. But I would say he was probably the better dad. I think he was more his role.
Who, Steedman?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he was quite a good actor, wasn't he? I think. Yeah, he's
You don't get to be in the Golden Girls if you're not a good actor.
exactly.
Well, just this week, I found out there was a Golden Girls spin-off.
Yeah, I meant to mention that to you because I remember that vaguely. I'm surprised you
Wow.
didn't. Yeah.
Mind blown. Anyway, but just one more random thing before we actually get back to talking about Minder. Not the last time I was there, but the time before that when I was in New York, me and my sister were in one of the best bars in Times Square, and I forget what it's called. The Rum House at the Edison Hotel. And there's a theatre opposite, and there was a big crowd, and there was obviously somebody famous there. So we went over to check it out, and I had my phone, and I was right next to Doogie Howser, MD. So I should have asked him, what was Tony Steadman like? Did you prefer him or Peter Vaughan? Yeah, definitely. Right, back to it.
So they go back to their family home and they start. He explains that Freddie Fenton is a good guy and got done as well. That none of them, they're all innocent parties, basically, doesn't he? And
Mrs. Hurst isn't quite as convinced, is she?
yeah. And what do they go? I was going to say, what do
who
they
plays
call
Mrs.
it?
Hurst? Oh, it's Mr. Terry.
Mr. Terry.
Yeah, all the way through.
All the
Mr.
way
Terry.
through, they all call him Mr. Terry. Now, this is time for my crazy theory of the week. At no point in this episode is he referred to as Terry McCann. It's only Terry. Had they not decided on McCann at this stage, first episode? I've not seen anything online about it. The people question why they call him Mr. Terry,
Yeah.
but had they not settled on McCann? I don't know.
And on
'Cause Mr. Terry's very weird, and he doesn't question it.
Yeah, they're not, this is the 1970s, and these are not foreign characters.
No.
Somewhere it will be Mr. Terry, and, as they did in those days in sitcoms and telly.
yeah, if it was
But
a Bengal tiger episode, you'd go with it, wouldn't you? But yeah, this is a traditional Anglo-Saxon middle class family living in suburbia.
Is that a little tear coming to your eye there, Mark?
Yeah. It's this red wine. It's come out of a box. I love a box of wine, but it's not good.
Yeah, so I wondered whether, I don't know, that's just a crazy theory, but because there's an element of McCann. Why, when you think about that surname, he's not Irish, is he? Terry McCann, whereas McCann is an Irish name, and we meet his nan in a few episodes' time. She's not Irish, but I don't know. Maybe they had a little wobble on it and thought, "Can we go with McCann?" Don't know.
So that's not to say they hadn't, because obviously there's the novel of Minder by Leon Griffiths, and I've got a funny feeling that was probably either already completed by the time they started filming, because it came out very, very quickly. But that's not to say in his original vision it wasn't Terry McCann. I suppose your point is that maybe at the time of production they were having a bit of a second think about it, or a bit of a wobble about it.
Yeah, because I think there were apparently like some things in the production did get quite heated, didn't they? I was watching something the other day saying that the casting of George Cole, there was like literally things being thrown across the room with people not happy about it. And is it Verity Lambert? I think she stuck to
Yeah.
her guns. She thought he would be perfect for it and stuck to her guns, and other people were very unhappy. So
Well
it could
done,
be that,
Verity.
it could be that people were questioning whether he should be a McCann, because it's an Irish surname, isn't it? And I think
Yeah,
it's
so-
Irish, isn't it?
Yeah, Celtic, you would say, certainly.
Yeah.
So if Terry was his surname, I think the way Des speaks to him though and says Terry, it doesn't strike you as a surname. It does seem like his first
No,
name.
I'm not saying that his name was Barry
Something
Terry.
Terry.
Yeah. I'm
I was going to
saying
say,
that
what would you have had as his first name?
What did he say?
Terry
Did you
was
say
his
Darren?
surname.
Huh?
Barry.
Did you say Darren or Harry Terry?
Barry Terry.
Harry Terry.
Because John Terry.
Terry.
John Terry, what a terrible name. Who do
No,
that?
what I meant was he was always going to be Terry, but maybe he was going to be Terry Johnson or Terry Smith but
Good
anyway.
stuff, Andy. I like
No,
this.
it's just a crazy theory I made up.
Yeah, I think it's nonsense.
But
But
that's
I
where you get
appreciate
that's
that-
where
yeah.
you get your likes and your whatever they call it, your thumbs
And
up.
when we do our book, we can have
Yeah.
Andy's conspiracy corner.
yeah.
You and a picture of like Eamon Holmes or something,
Why Eamon
Anyway.
Holmes?
Well, we've got Mrs. Hurst, haven't we? Now she
Yeah,
is
You've had enough of
played,
the conspiracy now, haven't you? It's time to move along.
but she's played by Kathleen Byron. Now what was she in? She's got some stellar.
But she was
the
in.
lights have gone off.
Oh,
I think there's been some form of power cut.
Go on.
Credits for Mrs. Hurst, played by Kathleen.
she's in a big film, isn't she? What's the big film she won? Like proper big.
Yeah,
old
I mean,
film.
there's 3 massive films there. Well, actually, there's 4 massive. Actually, there's 6. But
Go
in
on.
terms of starring roles, in terms of where she was a major character and got lots of plaudits and like potential awards, she was in A Matter of Life and Death,
That's what I was thinking of.
starring David Niven, which is a sensational film. I'm not huge on like going back to 40s, 50s movies. It's not really my thing, but that is a great movie.
Before you go on to the next credit, who was other than this woman, who was the other leading woman in A Matter of Life and Death? I think, and we will have to edit this out if I'm wrong because I look like a plonker, but I think it was Deborah Kerr, whose grandson was Lex Shrapnel, who played the Minder in the Shane Ritchie reboot, which
What?
I know
This is
The
we
classic.
vowed never,
classic Minder.
That's an incredible link, though. That is, yeah.
There you go.
Your first episode ever filmed, linked to the last episode ever filmed of non-canon, really non-canon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I
she was
suppose-
in Black
It's taken-
Narcissus.
Okay.
So
Which I've
another
never seen.
Powell Pressburger film.
Yes, it is a power press brother. Yeah. Yes.
And then she's
I
in
think,
The Elephant Man.
All right.
One of our dinosaurs is missing.
Now we're getting to classics. I mean, pardon me, fuck Powell and Pressburger. This is what I'm all about.
And then more recently, she was in, well, not that recently, but Les Miserables, and Saving Private Ryan. So it's a stellar career, but yeah, particularly those first few, she was absolutely top billing and huge credits. And to be fair, I think she does a pretty good job in this.
Yeah, she's fine. Not much to do, but
No, but she does it well.
does it
So
well.
I've watched it 3 times now. She does it well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. Other than the fellow who got it with the cabbage, most of the acting is pretty good. The car park attendant we meet soon, he's not quite as stellar, but he's all, But generally, the standard of acting is pretty good in this one, I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, so she turns Terry onto
Terry,
Mr. Terry. She turns Mr. Terry onto Freddie Fenton. She's not so convinced by her husband's Freddie Fenton's an innocent party, and she gives Terry his address,
yeah,
or his work address, I should say.
We've barely got into this episode at all yet,
I
have
know.
we?
well, let's race it along a bit then. Right, we haven't even got to where Eamon Holmes comes into it yet. So Terry goes to his office, doesn't he? And he hides from him, doesn't he? And he phones him and makes him go out the back door. And he collars him and he's no comment and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? Like, he doesn't want to speak to him.
And he's quite menacing as a villain. I think Jacoby does it quite well. And again, I wouldn't think of Jacoby in broader terms as a good, like, evil villain character, but I think he's good. Now, Pete, you may not agree, but
Yeah, I'm just not. It's nothing he does. It's when there's just some actors that you just kind of not particularly moved by one way or the other. Like I would rather an actor who I found them really annoying or irritating or whatever, because at least they're having that impact on you. I mean, look, I know he's a marvelous actor. We'll get to the final thoughts. To me, it's just not the whole episode is kind of a little bit Terry McCann, or just Terry,
Mr. Terry.
Private Sleuth. It's kind of the whole, that, it doesn't quite work for me. But he is a very credible sort of minder villain, isn't he? With the luxury mansion and a woman in a swimsuit by his pool and stuff like that. And I know I'm getting ahead in terms of the plot, but
I don't think that really matters. I don't think, as you
it
say,
really doesn't.
I don't think there is really a lot. I think you're right. There's not a lot going on. I think Derek Jacobi is really, really good as the villain. I'm with Mark. I think he's fantastic. And I think it's entertaining because he's good and the episode moves along really nicely. But as you say, not much happens. But I think it's pushed along by the quality of the acting.
That's fair.
And he is quite sinister in it. I think he does play sinister. That sort of, there's a low level malevolence there. He's sort of a guy you don't want to mess with. I think he plays it pretty well.
Yeah, if you want to jump ahead, we might as well to the swimming. We might as well lump them together. The bit with the swimming pool and this. He is like in that bit. He is quite scary. Not scary, but quite sinister. And you can see why Terry would be, like a little bit wary of him, because he is quite menacing, and he sends the girl out, doesn't he? Gives him a talking to, and Terry sort of has to disappear with a flea in his ear, doesn't he? Really.
Do you get any sense of, with that particular villain? Do you get any sense of apologies if it's mentioned? Any kind of backstory? I get the sense that don't get the sense that he's some kind of like white collar criminal. You get the sense he's nasty and he's from a nasty background, but he's gone from that sort of criminal underclass to he's made it a bit with this whole new sophisticated type of crime, almost like white collar crime, almost. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I get that sense that he could properly handle himself, but now he's got a few heavies to help him out, and he's just coming up with he's using classic business techniques to stitch people up, steal all their money, not actually own anything, but have it all in shell companies. So he's sort of he's sort of an intelligent hard man.
Yeah, I mean, I think
above it.
He's clearly not just made his money from some sort of timeshare scam, as he
been around
lots of, I reckon proper villainy before, and then he's moved into this kind of thing. He must have needed some capital to get into that, and the sort of lifestyle they're portraying would suggest that he's a proper villain from the old school. Definitely,
because he's not fazed by Terry. Quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, and I think Terry is slightly wary of him.
Yeah, and he's quite condescending to him as well, isn't he? Sort of like, I'm a winner, you're a loser. Get out of my way. It's that sort of mentality, and he's sort of quite patronising and condescending to him. He has a proper go at him, but he does it with a lot of confidence.
So, is this a metaphor for Thatcher's Britain?
Yeah. I took Britain forever.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know something about that? It's not. It can't be a metaphor for Thatcher's Britain.
Because it was filmed before she got in power.
Well, no, this is the thing. So the final Thursday, so I think it was a 2-week shoot, Monday to Friday. On the Thursday, the last Thursday was the election where she got elected.
Wow.
And they wrapped the next day. So
good research. I'm loving it.
Yeah, there you go. So there's something, that's why I put at the beginning of this the date. So people will go, I know that date. So there you go. So we're kind of all over the place with this, aren't we? But I don't think that really matters. Did you spot the who Fenton's hard man and driver is.
You can't not spot him, can you? For people of a certain generation,
Yeah,
along comes all right Tweakle, Pete Beale,
it is.
or
Pete
Peter
Beale.
Dean, the actor Peter Dean, but Pete Beale from EastEnders, just incredible, sight on your TV at that stage.
He could
think
he
he-
never act, could he?
I think he started out playing a lot of heavy type character. Again, he's in the Rock and Roll Swindle, playing a bouncer, manhandles Steve Jones out the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, he did do a lot of those roles, didn't he? And then they started giving him dialogue, and good God.
But fit in perfectly in EastEnders. It was absolutely
Yes,
fine. Didn't stand out as a bad actor in that at all.
No, I don't think he did actually. So yeah, we forgot to mention. So you're right, we're all over the place, but basically the gist is Terry's on the case. Initially, Freddie Fenton says he was as much a victim as anybody else. Then unravels he wasn't, and it's kind of how do we get to that, and then how do they get the better of Fenton? When Arthur and Biggins go to the Montclair Club?
The Montclair.
Did you clock the hostess?
I did clock the hostess, but I wasn't sure who it was.
I haven't double checked it, but I think that's Julia Bond, who's an absolute mainstay of all those terrible, naughty films from the 1970s, of which we are quite fond. So she's in Ups and Downs of a Handyman. She's in What's Up Nurse. She's in More Than You Know, and she was actually in. We put her in our saucy book. She gets a proper poster in our saucy book. But I know
I
yeah,
do have a copy of your saucy book.
you certainly do.
Yes. Available from Confessions Press Stock.
Well, not at the minute, but if anybody wants it, I'll do a few more. But yeah, it's her, and she, like I say, she was in probably more than she's not given credit as being one of the main women in all those naughty films, but she's probably in more than Sue Longhurst and people like that. But anyway,
Okay.
we've gone off track.
So the thing we haven't mentioned is that what Freddie Fenton is doing, he's driving around in a bashed up old Ford Cortina. And then he's taking it to a parking garage and then swapping it for a Rolls Royce Silver Shadow, isn't he? And they're driving home in that. And then, so he uses
he's claiming poverty and innocence, and that he's been stitched up just as much as everyone else. So that sends Terry off the scent.
Yeah, because Terry says to Biggins and Arthur, doesn't he? There's another scene in the Taylors where he says, because Arthur suggests he should have given him a slap, doesn't he? And he said it wouldn't have done any good. And this is before he's rumbled in, isn't it? But yeah, so he suggested he should have given him a slap. He's like, no. And then they go to the Montclair Club, don't they? And then Arthur sees the number plate, doesn't he? His FF1. And is his name Freddie Fender or something?
Yeah.
Almost is Freddie Fenton.
Because he knows him because he's his tailor and he has his home address, which is fantastic, because then we've got his home address, can give it to Terry, and he can go around and, if he's driving around in a Rolls Royce, he's not as impoverished as he's making out. I think, you talked about the hostess at the Montclair Club. I think there's, in the bit she's in, I think there's a mistake in that bit. And I meant to rewatch it just to check, and I forgot.
Well, in addition to the 3 times you've already watched it.
Well, I made a note the first time, and then the 2 times I watched it since, I didn't check.
Okay, tell us
But
more.
I think she says in the book, Alan, to Biggins and Arthur, and they've left it in. So rather than saying Arthur or Harold, Biggins playing
it's
Harold.
Yeah, that's Harold. Yeah.
Yeah, she says sign the book, Alan, and they've left it in. Now I meant to go back and check, but I wrote it down. I may have had a couple of jars at the time that I wrote it, but I've got it here. Sign the book, Alan. Mistake left in.
You know how George Lucas goes back to the Star Wars films periodically and sort of introduces new things and stuff like that? Well, maybe they could revisit this and just tweak it.
Yeah. Well, Biggins, is she still around?
Don't know.
Special edition,
Biggins.
Minder special edition.
Extra Biggins.
No thanks.
Yeah. Pete Bill's still around as well, isn't he? He could come back.
Yeah.
I would probably be up for digitally removing Biggins and putting someone else in.
So while they're at the casino, Bree is getting cozy with Joe, isn't he?
Mm. And it's definitely, yeah. I mean, it's definitely on. isn't it? It's definitely on.
It seems to be, doesn't it? But then the end doesn't make any sense. But
No,
it seems
exactly.
to
I
be
think
on.
that's for me is the biggest plot hole at the end. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again. But I
We
think
just want it to be over.
Terry's definitely
Everyone's shouting at their TV screen or into their podcast earphones. Just get on with it. Finish it. Get
There's
it
some
over
great. We
with.
haven't got to some of the best bits yet.
Okay, we'll get there now. Go on.
Well, it's definitely on, but then she gets a phone call and she's got to go and do a taxi job, so
Yeah.
she has to leave. And Terry's like, "Oh, this is more bad
Yeah,
news.
I can't handle any more disappointment or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then we haven't talked about Terry and Des having a fight, because Terry goes to get the final car with Des, and Des gives him 500 quid for the previous 2 jobs, and Terry's like, "What, 500 quid? What are you talking about? It's repairing cars." And it's like, "Oh, no, and it's like, and then so Terry gets all upset again, a bit like which they nicked with Del and Rodney suddenly. Well, here's your share of the dirty money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Terry's like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And then he's about to really go for it, and then Des hurtles off, and they have a nice little comedy chase scene.
Yes.
Where Des is running in a really comedic way. Terry's running in his proper way.
Yeah, because they kind of run over some like
it's a
scrap.
wasteland. Yeah.
And there's like, why don't they just go around it?
Yeah, jump on some fencing that's fallen over. And
but then he kind of gets
it's a good bit.
hooked on the
like
barbed
it.
wire and stuff, doesn't he? And it's quite funny.
Yeah, so I think it's a good comedy chase, and I think again it adds to that characterization and the how they develop that Des character, and I say a bit more. It's a bit more of those two in this episode than it is Terry and Arthur in a way.
But I think as Pete said though, it does seem to be just getting us to the final point. But
The switch.
it's still
But then we have
Sorry.
the best scene of the whole thing.
go on.
They go into the Rolls Royce shop.
Oh yes.
The
And they meet the
Jack
bloke from Duty Free.
Barclay showroom on Berkeley Square or Berkeley Square. Berkeley
Yeah.
Square? I've gone mad. Berkeley Square. Which, little side note, which Asquith movie does the Jack
Carol.
Call It Carol, Pete's there quickly, the same showroom is used in the Call It Carol film.
They've got a funny
It's still
feeling
there,
it's
isn't
still
it?
there. I think
Yeah.
so,
Is
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will go and have a look.
I have been in it. I remember going in when I was a
What were
young
you
man,
doing in there?
casing the joint.
Andy used to be a mechanic 40 years ago.
A northern mechanic.
Yeah. I was a bit of a Des. So yeah. But yeah, I've been in there and they were very nice actually, the people in there. They gave us I can't remember who I went with, someone we were at school with. But they gave us loads of stuff, like brochures and but like really fancy looking stuff. They were really nice in there. Yeah. So
And
but
the
yeah,
salesman is
the bloke
the
from Duty Free.
the great Neil Stacey.
Yeah.
And not only duty free, and let's not just categorise him into a incredibly successful but very average sitcom from the mid-80s. He was also in 3 Up, 2 Down.
Oh, yeah.
He played the love interest of Daphne. So a stellar career, but this is probably the highlight, I think.
Yeah.
It is a good scene. And,
Yeah.
and I think this is where we get a glimpse of the joy to come in terms of...
because this is Arthur at his best, isn't it? He's going in saying, "I'd like to if I put my name down for a Rolls Royce, how long will it take?" And it's like, "Oh, it'll be the gestation period of an elephant, sir."
And as he said, we're not all
We're not zoologists.
yeah.
So how long is that? I said, it's about 3 years, which I've looked it up. It isn't. The gestation period of an elephant is between 18 and 22 months. So I like to fact check. But, for the
absolutely.
sake of art, that's fine. And then as they're leaving and Neil Stacey goes, "So would you like to put your name down?" And he goes, "No, I think I'll stick with a maxi," which is my favourite line from the episode.
And that's what Joe's been driving him around in, isn't it?
It is,
That's a maxi. So, yeah.
But how can he tell that's a taxi?
A taxi
I know
maxi.
it's obviously a private hire, but there's nothing on that car that indicates... Because at the beginning, when he meets her, and he basically says, "Hang on a sec, you're not driving this, are you?" And he instantly knows that she's a taxi driver. How does he know that?
No, she introduces herself as, "I'm your driver," because they know each other. So he says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And then she goes,
He says,
Roundabout way, I'm
Arthur
your
says, "I've
driver."
got a taxi.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. He's waiting for a taxi in a turn. Sorry. It's me being dense now. I missed that bit.
So if you watch it 3 times, then
Yeah. Well, you still missed the mistakes, though. Still fail to verify them. So,
so that is my favourite bit. And then where do we go? We start to
Final
do the
credits.
switch.
They-
Des nicks the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, they follow Fenton into the garage, don't they? And there's a little bit of casual racism between.
So it's quite overt racism at this point. But mild for the. I mean, wouldn't even be considered racist in the 1970s. It's just Terry does an Indian accent at one point in a slightly demeaning way. But
Did you laugh?
I suppose in a post-ironic way now that you're laughing at Terry, you're not laughing at the Indian.
I laughed at Terry.
Yeah.
you can get away with anything if you say it's post-ironic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I like almost more at Dennis Waterman's attempts at the accent rather than Terry the character. I think.
Now, when they're all at it, weren't they? Minder and Fools and Horses early
Yeah.
doors.
Yes.
And to be fair, Fools and Horses throughout its entire tenure had some dodgy stuff in there.
But not with any malice, and I think that is a key differentiator.
That's like the opposite of a trigger warning.
Yeah.
It's like a defense warning, just to let you know there's some racist comedy here, but none of them meant it. So get over yourself.
You couldn't put a trigger warning on Only Fools and Horses, could you?
Probably should. I mean, everything else.
As in
gets
terms
it,
of
so
one of the main characters is Trigger. So if you say there's a trigger
Well,
warning, it'll.
there's a story there, but I won't bore our listeners with us. But I will bore you two with it once we stop recording. Once we pretended to say goodnight and bye to each other, and then turn off. The car switch. It's a much less gratifying switcheroo than the one we had in Bury My Hearth at Waltham Green.
Yes.
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 It's a fairly. Yeah. It's just a quick switch, isn't it?
But the one in Bury My Hearth at Waltham Green was over elaborate. This one is
totally
very
on the beat
perfunctory.
for it.
Yeah.
It's just like we've come to change the radio. We're going to drive it off. Away we go.
Whereas this, they could have done without it because there's just so many little. There's nothing going on really dramatically or comedically, in my view. But there's lots happening. There's lots of activity, and they probably could have done without this. But actually, you remove that, and then you essentially remove the entire Des subplot. You could argue. So anyway, so we have the switcheroo, which is basically Terry saying, "I've got your car that we know you're going to have to wait another 3 years for. So give us the money, and you can have your car back."
Yeah.
There are winners and losers and all that. Again, he does, doesn't he?
And Terry gives them instructions of where they've got to meet to do the exchange. £6,000, and you can have your car back. But he takes out the it's like the alternator or something, isn't it? I mean, and you were a mechanic, you'd know what he takes out.
Yeah, it was like the ignition what lead or something, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was the alternator lead. Yeah, something like that. Did you two notice? You sit forward.
They were both leaned in there.
Yeah.
I
I thought you were going to do a Michael Caine impression.
Did you?
Did you know?
Notice what Terry is wearing in this scene?
I'm not as sartorially tuned in as you, so no.
So, because Terry gets through a lot of clothes for just like a minder, doesn't he? He's got about 15 jackets that he wears.
Well, he's having a fight every week. They're going to get torn and battered.
That's true. But he is wearing the same clothes that he's wearing in this title sequence. He's wearing the jumper.
Never.
He is.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So he's wearing that outfit. So I'm wondering, did they film that this week as well?
He's got the same sort of haircut, which disappears
He's got the
later
same
on
haircut
as well, hasn't he?
Arthur, I think I can't quite make it out. I think Arthur's wearing the same suit as well that he's wearing in. Is he wearing a different
Spotter's
tie?
badge there, and
He has two different ties, but I think it's the same suit. But Terry's definitely wearing the same jumper and jacket that he's wearing in there. The trousers might be different, not quite sure, because you can't really, in the title, you don't really see his legs very well, do you? Terry's. Because he goes around the car, doesn't he? So,
Yeah.
so I can't quite work that out, but he's definitely wearing the jumper and the jacket anyway.
There'll be somebody possibly with, shooting schedules and stuff like that who might disprove it, but I think that seems very, very likely.
I've tried looking it up, and George Cole says in his biography that he got the part, and then 3 weeks later they were filming the title things. But I think he means the pictures. I think he means they were taking the pictures, which
Yeah.
were taken a few weeks before they started filming. So I'm wondering whether they just filmed that scene as part of this episode as well, because it would make sense when you would do it in the first episode you
Yeah.
filmed. I don't know.
And it was good. It's iconic, though.
Yeah, if anyone knows, let us know.
Does that mean
Yeah.
that Sazdi directed the opening credits?
Assume so. Don't know, but assume so.
Well, with the professionals, there's like an alternative. I don't know if it's in like what was essentially the pilot episode, but there's an alternative series 1 credits bit where they're in a bit of a chase rather than the well-established credits that we know. And the alternative ones were directed by David Wicks, presumably when doing an episode. So that, I think that must have been standard protocol. So I think that seems likely, especially as it's the first one that they filmed.
Yeah, and it's also the car as well. The car, Terry, is Capri in this one is the car from that, because sometimes
yeah,
he's in a
there's a-
white Capri. But it's a
There's
different.
a great moment. It's when he drives it in and it's absolutely beaten to shit.
Yeah,
Have you noticed that? He drives it up and he parks up and he goes to speak to Des, but like the number plate is falling
number
off.
plate's
Yeah,
hanging
It's
out.
hanging off.
all battered. It's all battered down the side, like a grey. It's like it's been through like some form of hellhole. But it's really weird. And there's a lovely bit where a white cat walks across
Yeah,
the street and just
Yeah.
stops effectively. And so still,
Yeah.
you know, we're talking about
and George
Hall of
Layer has
Fame.
to
I'd
walk
like the
around
cat to
it,
go
doesn't
in.
he? Yeah, George Layer walks around the cat rather than because it's blocking his path. But yeah, the car is. I'm wondering whether there was a deleted scene where, like, Fenton's people roughed his car up or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because it's
But
in a terrible mess.
yeah,
And,
it is weird.
And obviously, then he's driving a different Capri generally after
Yeah,
that.
but
isn't it?
the one he's in this is the one from
Yeah.
that start.
Top marks, Andy. Top of the
Yeah.
bloody class.
There you go. So anyway,
And you hadn't watched it 3 times.
So he's Fenton's handing over the money. Terry's handing over the keys and the alternator cable, and it all seems happy. And Fenton asks Terry how he's getting home because he hasn't got a motor now. And he says, "Well, I was hoping you were going to drop me off at the tube station." At that point, Fenton goes, "Right now," and the heavies jump out the back of his van.
I mean,
And
they must have been properly like crouching because they're all big fellas.
they're big fellas, and it is again. This is a terrible punch-up scene. I think I don't think there's not really a proper punch thrown. Maybe one, but Terry's his actions are first of all to do a leapfrog over the first fella, and then to do a sideways roll below
Yeah, he
the other
rolls.
two. It's a
Oh,
bit
yeah, he
like
trips them up, doesn't he?
it's a bit like the Flash Gordon movie when they have the American football fight in the middle of it. And it's just, I think it's quite a poor fight scene. Quite enjoyable to watch when you think, I really could really done with him lamping Freddie Fenton. I'd really
Yeah.
like to see him give Jacoby one across the chops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, so he's effectively evaded them with a leapfrog and a roll, and then he jumps off the flyover and lands on a lorry that Des has acquired.
So the fight was it Caesar's Palace or Caesar's Salad?
So salad.
Salads, definitely.
Definitely salad, isn't it? Yeah. Also, that leap.
And he runs his whole, we saw him in our last episode. We saw him sort of vindictively chase somebody that he's had virtually nothing to do with at all, just for the sheer pleasure of like smashing his
Yeah.
face in. In this one, he's up against some just London villains, and his whole strategy is to just have it on his toes and then jump off into the van, which it's all, yeah. So, yeah, definitely Caesar salad.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the land on the van though.
Yeah,
on the
I
top
like
of the
that.
lorry. It's good. It's a nice jump off the flyover, and then he flicks him the V's as they drive off. So I think it's a nice.
That's a good
finish.
touch. It's a very British touch, isn't it?
And then the biggest plot hole of all.
So back to the pub, and I've put it on a little rundown here is pub and disappointment, which is generally how Minder episodes of this era end, isn't it? They end in a pub and disappointment. So,
Yeah, sounds like my average Friday night, to be fair. So talk us through it.
So they, what's her name? Joe turns up, and they're expecting 12.5%, and they're working it out, aren't they? How much it will be?
750 quid.
Yeah, and then Arthur's got his calculator out, and Joe turns up. She turns up with a fella, doesn't she? And and he's my partner now. And so what does she give? She gives him, is it 250?
200 quid. 200.
200 quid.
200 notes.
I know you didn't do it for the money.
And also what I don't like in this bit, and it's quite typical of the era of just TV shows and doing it, but it just doesn't ring true. They come in, they go to the bar, order a drink. They ask Arthur and Terry if they want a drink. One, Arthur says no, which wouldn't happen. Again, is totally out of character. He's like, no, we're fine. They've ordered their drinks. They come and say literally 2 sentences to Arthur and Terry, and then they leave. They up and leave. They've not had a sip out of their drinks.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, I think the fella he's had a quick glug, but it's not, if you're buying 2 drinks in a pub, you're not staying for 25 seconds to hand over 200 quid, say thank you and disappear.
Yeah. So that is a big of a plot hole, because where did they get the 12.5% from? And Arthur doesn't seem that bothered, and he lets Terry keep the money as well, which is very
out of character.
Very out of character.
And it seems that Joe has, within the space of maybe 48 hours, fallen in love with her boss.
Yeah.
Agreed that they're going to buy a place, a bed and breakfast place in Mallorca.
As Arthur calls it.
Yeah.
So it just all seems a bit of a hurried, impractical ending. I'm not a big fan of the ending.
No, it's a rubbish ending. To be fair, it's
just indulge me. So she gives Terry the money, disappear, and then he starts to mutter something apologetically to Arthur, and Arthur says, "Oh, it's fine," and lets him keep the money. What is it that he's muttering apologetically, that he got the money and Arthur didn't, or?
Well, because Terry says he's not bothered about the money. I think that even before he's because they were talking about getting 750 quid, and they were like 375 each, and Terry's like, yeah, I'm not really bothered about the money. Don't worry about it. So you could see in like later episodes, Arthur's eyes would light up at that, wouldn't they? But it's all sort of left adrift. The whole thing, there's no real discussion. The 12.5% just seems a mythical thing that Arthur's made up. Yeah, and then he gets the £200. I'm not sure what he mutters after that. He agrees to go and buy Arthur a drink out of his winnings, as Arthur calls them, of £200, and he orders he can have 2 vodka and tonics, 1 large, and then Arthur looks round, does a little nod, and Terry goes back, 2 large, and that's how it ends. And it is quite a nice little play between them, but it doesn't ring very true for later how those characters were, or just the whole thing seems a bit odd to me.
It does.
Yeah. But I don't want to end on a downbeat note, because I think it's a really enjoyable episode to watch. Even though plot holes, nothing really happens. There's not any real punch-ups. There's not that much humour in it compared to normal. But so it's some really good acting, really good cast, and it's an enjoyable watch for me. So we're going to go to vote. Pete, it's your turn to go first. I may have made that up. But...
So what am I doing? Giving it a mark out of 10?
Yes.
To me, I think this is I can't remember what I gave last week's. Maybe a 6. But this is well below that. I'm going to say 4. Yeah.
Lowest so far.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm not taking with this episode, and it's been interesting talking about it with you. Well, the viewers will be the judges of that. But there are a few bits there of interest, like the historical stuff about the fact it's the first one that was filmed, probably when they filmed the credits. The establishment of Des, that is all great. But I'll tell you what, in view of that, I will push to 5, because I'm probably going to enjoy it more now when I watch it again, having listened to your various takes on it. So I'm going to say 5.
Well, that's the idea, isn't it? It's supposed to, you watch this and then you like it more, you go back and watch it again. So that's
Don't
the,
patch it.
yeah.
I know these things work.
So I'm gonna I like it a lot more than you do. I think Jacoby's great. I think Des is great. I think Biggins is pretty good too. I think now you saying it, listening to you, I've got off it more. But
That's how these things work, Andy.
yeah. So I think
That's the
I'm
idea.
gonna say a solid 7. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah,
But
I've put down. So I'm not going to change my opinion from what I wrote down when I first watched it. I'd watched it first time, made a few notes, put my score down, made some observations, and I put 7. But I'd say only because I think there's not that much happens and it's not as funny. But I think it's a really enjoyable watch. So 7 for me is a good solid 7. And if you go online, this is a really popular episode. If you go on like the Minder fan sites, a lot of people really rate this one. So I think there was a lot of love for this episode out there. And I can see the elements why, and maybe we're overanalyzing it too much. I don't know, but I'd say I enjoyed it, but I just think it's not quite classic Minder for me.
It's a good episode of television. I just don't think it's a good episode of Minder, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does.
So I always often get it confused, if I haven't watched it for a while, with the episode with George Baker, who plays a heavy and is pretty brutal with Arthur. I always get them confused, so I'm always a little bit thrown when the nasty things that I assume are about to happen to Arthur don't happen.
Yeah.
that one is a bit darker, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. That's the correct
Yeah.
word, definitely.
I think that was the first episode of Minder I ever saw, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Interesting. I
Interesting.
think this was the first episode. I distinctly remember the flyover bit from early on, early. So I reckon.
The Nick
I'd
that
have
is that
seen
from
this.
like Butch and Sundance or something?
Well, they do jump into the
That set piece thing where
ravine,
they
don't
yeah, but they die when they jump off, don't they?
No, they die
Earlier
at
on.
the end, don't they? And when they get shot, they go run out, guns blazing.
Yeah.
But when
So
they jump off,
Yeah. But I'm thinking maybe I got back from the Birdie Inn and was allowed to stay up late and watch this one.
You know what? Could be
I
it.
did say
Could
that
be it.
when I watched it, I just like, I've distinctly remember the jumping off the flyover bit.
Right.
yeah.
Any location spots, gents?
The underground car park I recognise.
That's in.
Which I-
Is it Kensington or?
I did look it up. It's because they're all on minder.org, so they do an incredible job of looking through and picking out the various spots.
Yes. It's always worth a shout out to minder.org. Fully
Yeah.
agree there. A minder of information. So, okay. Yeah, the bit where Des picks up Terry for the second time and Terry says, like, oh, well, for the third time. He says, not today, I've got a bit on.
Yeah, I
reckon-
recognise that. I
Nice
can't-
there.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's where I thought it was, which was ironically, it reminded me of, we talked about
Mm.
Citizen Smith, but I don't think it's there. And there wouldn't have been filming there, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I think
That's
most of this was around Fulham, and then apart from like the suburban bits, when there was a bit more over near Richmond, Twickenham way
Right.
for
Okay.
this one, from memory. And then obviously there's the Montclair Club. But I'd say the Montclair Club, that's not a real thing, is it? I tried to look it up. I couldn't. There's the Claremont Club. Now, I wasn't sure whether they were doing a little spin on Claremont and turning it round to Montclair.
Yeah, that must
But-
be it.
Mm.
That definitely must be it, yeah.
Was that Lord Lucan Claremont?
Claremont Club, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he used to live there, didn't he? Like, not
Yeah.
literally, but like
Yeah,
he went
yeah.
there for his breakfast and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
blows your mind. Okay, so, well, it's nice that you like this more than me. I will revisit it and I will, look at it through different eyes. So what was going on culturally, Mark? Have you done your...
I've done a quick look. I mean, we've overrun by quite a lot, so I'll just make some brief observations, I think, and maybe a quick question for you. The top 10 is still absolutely cracking, by the way, as it's an incredible top 10. Late 70s era music is absolutely stunning. But it was the release date this week of an absolute classic, of the song that reached number 1 from 1979 into the 80s, and it was released this week. Andy, do you know which song that is? It's their only number 1. They didn't release many singles.
Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall.
Yes, Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd was released
wow.
this week. And yeah, so that was a song that went to number one. Was a scary video for everyone at school at the
I saw it
time.
the other day, actually.
And yeah, I mean, it was an absolute iconic song of the era, and it took us from the 70s into the 80s. And the album The Wall was released later that week. Top films on release. Now, I thought, there's some bit dodgy moves at that time, but the top films in the UK of 1979. I saw this one at the cinema. What do we think the number one film in the UK of 1979 was, from a very famous British franchise?
Moonraker.
Spot odds badge there for Pete. Correct. I've only until the Daniel Craig era, I'd only ever seen 2 James Bond movies at the cinema, and Moonraker was the first. Octopussy was the second.
2 of my top 3 favourites.
Really? And then the US, though, and globally, allegedly, though it's quite difficult to get definite data, the top film of 1979 globally. It did win the Oscar in the following February for Best Film.
Deer Hunter?
I'll go, it's Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman as the lead roles.
Kramer versus Kramer.
Kramer versus Kramer, which I've never seen, actually. I remember it being advertised, probably when I was seeing Moonraker at the cinema. I remember it being advertised. So that was sort of what was going on. Life of Brian was released in November of 1979 as well, if we're talking absolutely iconic movies of the era. So that's the sort of general stuff that was happening.
Also, one thing we've failed to discuss is Special Guest Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Does anyone make the Hall of Fame this week?
Well, I don't, we're not including people like Des in this, because Des is a regular, isn't he? So I mean, not overtly regular, but he does 6 episodes or whatever. Yeah. So we'll take him out of that. So it's does Freddie Fenton get in? I'm erring on the side of no, even though it is Jacoby.
I think he's good, but yeah, maybe the episode was too slight. Maybe if he'd been Freddie Fenton series 3 or 4, maybe we would have had a better episode, possibly. Then he would
I don't know if it's accidental, but he is interesting. There's something slightly androgynous about him. He's, Derek Jacobi's got that pretty boy face, and then he's got this sort of blonde hair, like almost the kind you'd see with like the New Romantics in the sort of coming years.
Yeah, I thought Sting 1983 era.
Yeah.
Maybe he modelled himself on Jacoby in Minder.
I think that's likely. Well, I would vote no, but, this is it's not just
But if
me.
we got 2 no's, then we'll be a no.
Okay.
Unless people want to let us know they think he should be in, he can get in retrospectively, possibly.
Or should any of the other characters get in as well?
We to decide, really. We're just fans like everybody else. We're not experts, are we?
You two have done all right in the expertise stakes tonight.
To be fair, it's our show, so whatever we say goes in.
Yeah. Well, does that?
I think that about covers it, doesn't it?
I think so, mate. So how do people get in touch with us, Andy?
That's a good question. Well, you can leave a message on YouTube on the comments below, or you can contact us on Twitter at On The Slate Pod, or on Facebook, or any other social media that we may or may not have got around to setting up by the time you get to hear this. So I think that's time to call it a day, don't you?
Well, yeah, hopefully we'll edit it down to less than 3 hours.
Yeah?
Well, yes, we need to talk about that, gentlemen, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So thank you very much for listening. We'll see you all next week, hopefully. Take care. Thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers, folks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.